Welcome to a new video in my home automation channel, and this is going to be my second video on Shelly. I do have a separate playlist on Shelly devices if you are interested in that, and if you are new to Shelly, you can watch on my overview video on the Shelly devices and what Shelly is about. And here I'm going to review a Shelly 1PM, which is a Wi-Fi switch with a 16 amp relay, and it has power management functionality. That's what PM stands for. One, because it's switching one single channel, and besides switching that channel, it also has a switch input. So this is designed to be not a replacement, but something that would go along with your regular switch, and then just basically make that smart and then allow whatever device that you are controlling that switch to be controlled over your smartphone app or any other devices which have access to this Shelly. The physical design and the round shape comes from the intended use of this device, because as I said, it should be a like an addition to your existing switch. So the idea is that you would be able to hide this behind the wall socket in your switch, or somewhere else in your house, probably hidden away. And as I've also mentioned in my overview video, you can control this device using its own Shelly app, but it also supports REST APIs and MQTT as well, so it should be fairly easy to integrate to any DIY home automation systems you might have at home. And the headers which are available here under this cover allows you to flash it to some other home automation firmwares, for example Tasmota, which is probably the most popular, or you can write your own if that's what you fancy. When you buy a Shelly One, obviously you get the device. You get this small box which has the QR code for the Shelly app, both on the Apple Store and on the Google Play Store. And you find the relevant specs here, which I've already mentioned. You are also getting a small leaflet, again with a QR code with the Shelly Facebook group. So if you have questions and you want to get support, you can contact them via the Facebook group. And of course they have emails and website and the usual stuff. And you are also getting an instruction leaflet. I mean, besides the specification that you can see here, this leaflet also explains how you pair the device in the Shelly app and how to use it, just the initial setup. And it also goes into some details about the various functions. But as I mentioned before, there is a lot in this device that you can use. And that's what I try to focus on in this video. Probably the first thing that I want to mention is the different wiring diagrams. And this is going to be fairly easy. And by the way, the Shelly operates on normal mains AC voltage, 110 to 240 volts, but it can also operate on DC voltages, 24 to 60 volts as well. So that could be interesting for some of you. The connection diagram is the same whether you're using AC or DC. And it is fairly easy to see how it gets wired just by looking at the labels. So you have on the right, you have the neutral, so that's sort of like the common neutral. You have live 1 and then live. So the live 1 is the supply voltage that goes out to the mains, and the live 1 is the output voltage which goes to your switch, which is then returned to the SV output. So you connect your switch between the L and the SW output. And then O, which looks like a 0, but it's actually an O, that's for output. So then your bulb would get connected between the output, which is the switched live connection, and then between the neutral. And that's pretty much what you can see here. And just like with many devices, this will need neutral wire to be functional. And in an older style house where you only have 2 wires for coming down for a switch in a switch box, those would be, let's say, 2 black wires or 2 brown wires. So one would be the fixed live, and the other one would be the switch live connection, which goes out to your switch. For those cases, you won't be able to install the switch because you need a third connection as well, which would be a neutral line. So unless you can wire the neutral line into the box, you won't be able to use this device. Before I start wiring up the Shelly on the bench, I just wanted to go through the wiring through some PowerPoint presentations because, well, it is a really small device and there's quite a few connections, so it's really hard to follow all the, where the wires go on, on the camera. So I thought it would be easier if I do that. Here in these diagrams, I'm going to use the European coloring scheme. So my blue is always going to be neutral. If I'm correct, in the US, that's white, and black is live, but that can be brown as well. So let's start with the most simple or the most common setup, where you are controlling a light with a Shelly, and you also have a regular, toggle switch. So you have the neutral line, which goes directly into the end connection of the Shelly, and then it also goes to your lamp. So that's simple. The live comes through and it goes to the L1 connection, and then the switch has obviously two terminals, and that gets connected to L and SW. And then the output gets connected to the lamp. And since I mentioned about the wiring, of course I've used different colors for the switch and different colors for the the outgoing switch live, which goes to the, well, in this case the lamp. But also keep in mind that all these wires, I mean of course not the neutral one, but all these wires are live. So it's the live mains voltage which is going out to the switch, and of course the live mains voltage which goes to the lamp. Needless to say, if you are using this in a DC setup, then, well, that's obviously not light, but I think most people are going to use it in, with mains voltages like 120 or 230 volts. So just keep in mind that whatever wires you are using in your setup, it has to be like, proper gauge, and also your switches that you are using has to be, like proper switches that can handle mains voltage. Don't use these, small tactile push buttons that are used or designed for electronics projects. So that was a simple setup when you're controlling a light with one simple switch. I also wanted to mention that because the Shelly expects an input which normally comes from a regular switch, it doesn't really care about how that input gets switched. So if you already have like a two-way or a three-way switching in your house, you can keep that existing wiring and just like you see in this example, you just connect the two wires which is coming off the two-way switching to the L and the SW, and it's going to work like that. So you don't have to do anything. Your two-way switching is still going to work. And to look at an even simpler scenario, what happens if you have an outlet, a mains outlet, and you want to be able to switch that remotely? Then you can just put a Shelly 1PM behind your mains plug, and then you would need to wire it in such a way like you see in the diagram. So again, the neutral line goes to the N terminal, and it also goes to the neutral input of your receptacle, and your mains comes to L1, and then the output goes to your, again, receptacle. And of course, don't forget that the Shelly doesn't require earthing, but if you are using a receptacle, most probably has earth wires, so just connect the earth wire, which I represented here with the yellow line, as you would normally do with a with a mains receptacle. And earlier in the video I mentioned that because the Shelly needs mains voltage to operate, it also needs a neutral line. So if you have an older style house where you have only two wires coming down to your switch, so this is the sort of like the fixed live, and then the switch live which is going out to the switch, you won't be able to put a Shelly here because you don't have the neutral wire coming down to the the sort of the switch box. And of course, sometimes you don't have access to the neutral line, so you can't wire it down. If you can do, yeah, very simple, but if you can't, then that's a problem. But in some region, I know that that's quite common in Europe, that you have, like cable ducts in the wall going up, close to the ceiling, and you usually have your sort of like a junction box here, and then from the junction box it comes straight down to your switch. And within this junction box, you most probably have, the fixed the fixed live wire coming in, and the switch live which is going out to the lamp, and you also have the neutral line. Of course, the switch box could be difficult to find. Sometimes it gets plastered over, but if you have access to that, that could be a very good way to install the Shelly one as well, as you can see in the diagram here, because you still have the mains and the live coming in, you have the mains and the live going out to the lamp, and you have the two wires going down to your switch, and basically you just cut them and repurpose in the way I have shown in this diagram. So your Shelly is not going to be directly next to your switch, but it will still fulfill the same function as it's designed for. For this segment of the video, I moved to the garage, so I can show you the different setup with the various switches. So I have a couple of test switches here. And the first thing that I want to test is how you use it with a regular switch. So this is like a, like a normal light switch or a rocker switch. So you switch it one way and then you switch it back the other way. And for this, I'm using the instructions on the leaflet, how it gets connected. So again, the switch, the two lines from the switch gets connected to SV and L. And then L1 and N is the incoming line and neutral, so that's coming from the lead here. And then the switch gets connected again to N and the O outputs. And as you can see, if I switch the switch, then the light comes on. And if I switch it again, then the light goes off. And of course I can, turn it on from the app as well. I can turn it off. And one interesting working of this particular setup is, let's say this is the off state of the switch. So if it's, it's this way, then it's off. So if I turn it on, of course it comes on. With a little bit of delay, it comes on the app as well. If I turn it off here from the app now, then of course the switch remains in this status. And if I flip the switch again, then it remains off because, Shelly remembered that that's the off state of the switch. So this works a little bit different what we have seen in the Sonoff Mini, so that could be a little bit misleading. Of course, if I turn it on in the app and then I flick it on the physical switch, then it still remains on because that's the on state of the switch. I hope you get the idea. But if you don't like this mode of operation, actually there is a way to change that, because you go into the settings and then you go into the settings of the device. And then in the button type, I've just changed it to edge switch. So now what happens is, that's again the off state. So I switch it on using the switch now. So now the bulb is obviously on. We can see it in the app as well. If I turn it off in the app, then of course it turns off. But let's say I want to turn it off, so I walk up to the physical switch again and I flick it, then it becomes on. So now it works as what we have seen in the Sonoff Mini. So, no matter what position the switch in, if you touch it and switch it to the other state, then of course it will flip the state of the switch as well. And then you can do it in the app as well. So I think this is probably, I would say this is probably less confusing, because, I don't think you would remember whether your switch is on when it's on the up or in the down position. Originally, I have set it to toggle, so that's when it remembers the on-off state. And then when you set it to edge, then basically every flip is going to switch the state here. Now I've changed the setup slightly. I have this different type of switch, which is just a momentary switch. I happen to have two switches in here. I'm only using this one, so let's just ignore the other one. But it works like your switches for your bell. So basically you push it and you let it go, and then it springs back to the original state. So this is like a momentary switch or a push switch. And all I have done, I've just replaced the two wires, which goes to my old switch to this momentary one. And if I try to use it, what we will notice that as long as I push it, then it's on, and once I let it go, then the bulb goes off. So yeah, this is how you would expect, even without the Shelly, if you would wire it directly, because, well, this is just a momentary switch. But if you want to use a switch like this, then you can also go back to the settings. So I'm going back to the settings and the button type, and I'm selecting momentary. And now what happens, that instead of the bulb switching just for the moment where I push it, it basically changes state. So if I push it once, it changes state, and if I push it again, then it will get switched off. And of course now the switch doesn't have like an up or a down position, because it always springs back to the, let's say, to the neutral position. So if you would turn the device off from the app, or if you would turn it on, well, it just doesn't make a difference. I think most homes don't usually have this type of setup. I mean, they don't usually have these type of switches, especially if you are converting your old switches. You wouldn't have this momentary type. But if you want to install, if you would prefer this one, then you can use it. You just change the button type in the app. And with this one, we can make use of another feature, which is here in the settings. So for this one, let me set up a different scenario. So I go to the timer, and I'm going to set up an auto off. So let's say I'm going to switch this device off after 5 seconds. Let's just keep it slow so we can see how it works. So if I do that, if I turn it on, then what we should see that after 5 seconds, the switch automatically turns itself off. So this is the simple auto off feature. But let me go into the settings, and then in the button type, you can see this activation switch. And as it says here, this activation switch simulates how your motion sensors work. So if I, again, just press it once, and if I don't do anything, then after 5 seconds, the device is going to turn itself off. So what we are going to see in this case is if I press it again, and if I don't do anything, but let's say I press it again, then it doesn't turn off after 5 seconds, because every time you push the button, it just resets the auto off timer. So this is pretty much the setup that you would have in a communal hallway, where you have multiple of these switches, and if somebody, presses it, then the light comes on after 10 minutes. But let's say if you are, I don't know, if you wanted to extend that 10 minutes, you just press it again and the 10 minutes timer restarts. So this is a nice way of setting up this type of hallway switches and these resets. And again, even the app says that this is best used for some sort of motion activation switch. I mean, this is not a motion activated switch, but even like a PRI sensor which has a relay attached, then the relay can do pretty much the same thing what I have simulated here. Of course, that means that with the additional push of the button, you can't turn the device off. The only way to turn the device off before the timer elapses if you actually do it from the app. So for the rest of the demonstration, let me just go back to the button type and set it back to momentary so we can investigate how this unit works, and then we can look at some of the other features. So we have seen the basic functionality, so you can control the device from the app. You can also control it locally depending on what type of switch you have and how you set up that switch, how the device should behave for that. And because this is a Shelly 1 PM, and the PM stands for power measurement, you also have power measurement data here. I mean, this is not a big light bulb, so we are not drawing a huge amount of power, but as you can see, since I've been doing testing, I probably have consumed half a watt hours, not a lot. And of course, you can switch to a weekly mode, and you can switch into a monthly mode. I mean, I was using this device only for testing, so I don't really have a huge amount of data. If you want, you can also download the statistics, and then it just creates a CSV file on your device. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to open it. So you can just export it and put it into Excel if you fancy. On the settings page, we have a few options here. I mean, we already looked at the timer, and we have already looked at some of the settings, but let's just go into the timer. So you have an auto off timer, which this is what we have just seen. So whenever you turn it off, it will automatically turn itself. So whenever you turn the device on, it will automatically turn itself off after a certain amount of time. Let me just turn it off for now. And you also have an auto on feature, which works exactly the other way around. I'm trying to think about a scenario. Maybe this is like, I don't know, some sort of security type of device that even if you turn it off, you don't want to leave it off for a long time. So you want to turn it on with an auto on. I'm not really sure. If you have better ideas how you would use the auto on, just let me know in the comment section. So that was all about the timer. In the schedules, you can set up weekly schedules where you specify basically hour and a day, and or you can also specify sunrise and sunset, and then you set whether at that specific time you want the device to turn on and off, and you can also specify which day of the week. And of course, you can have multiple of these schedules. So yeah, you can use it for irrigation, for porch lights, which comes on at sunset and then turns off at 11 PM, something like that. Next one is internet security. Some of these features are available because I have the cloud connection turned on. So the first option is the Wi-Fi mode, or the client. So that shows you which Wi-Fi this device connects to. And you can have a second Wi-Fi. So if this Wi-Fi is not found, then it falls back to the second Wi-Fi. Or you can set up Shelly to create its own access point for configuration. I don't think it would get used a lot. As I mentioned in my overview video, each of these devices creates its own web server, so most of the functionality is available on that web server locally, and here you can specify whether that web server is only available after the user login or it's basically wide open. And the cloud connection, so you can disable the cloud connection, so this app is not going to work if you are not on the same Wi-Fi as your device. But if you enable the cloud connection, of course, if you leave the house, you go back to 3G, 4G, whatever, then you will still able to access this device. Of course, that means that you have to have an active internet connection at home. So that was internet security. The next one is safety. And that's basically just the safety of this device in relation to whatever is connected here. The device has a 16 amp relay, which means that theoretically it can supply up to 3500 watts. But if you know your device is less than that, then you can specify this maximum power protection here. So you can lower this number. Let's say I know this bulb only draws 8.6 watts. So if it starts drawing more than 10 watts, I want this device to automatically turn off, because most probably that means that there's something wrong with this. So this is like a basic safety feature. And if you are using this device in a fixed setup where the load doesn't change, it makes sense to set it up and then protect your device and also protect the Shelly. The next option is actions, and here you can configure local actions, and that basically says that if the button is switched on or off, or if the output is switched on and off, basically by either the switch or by an app, what URL should be called. And if you are using this in a cloud setup and with the app and everything, I think it would be easier to use the scenes instead of these actions. But if you would lose it locally, then these actions are still available. So let's say you have 2 of these local Shellys, then you can configure one so that when it gets turned on, it calls the on functionality of the other Shelly using URLs. So you can set up some sort of like local automation or local integration between the devices individually. Application settings, load type, I have to be honest, I don't understand the distinction between socket and light at the moment. Maybe it's getting differentiated in the power measurement, because the next section is also about power measurement. So as you probably have seen, I can see the power measurement on my device as well, but I can see it on the room level. So that's 0 watts at the moment. And here from this calculation, I can extend certain devices. So in the room consumption, all the devices get automatically included, of course only the ones that provide power measurement, but here you can specifically say whether you want this device to be excluded from the room consumption or the total house consumption. And the last functionality is you can put additional pin lock on this device, and that's going to be available for more Shelly devices. And the last one is the settings. We have seen the button type, so I'm going to talk about that. You have a power on mode, so that's the mode which the Shelly, or actually the output, should be once you power up the device. And the rest is more, technical stuff. So you see what the firmware is. You can set the local time zone. You can do a factory reset. You can do a reboot, and then you have the device information, which shows what network is connected to, what is the signal strength, and that sort of stuff. And that's the end of it. And of course, when I edit the device, I pick the name, which is 1 PM, and I also pick the logo, and I pick this light bulb logo. So if you go into the settings, and then if you do edit device, you are able to change the name, the logo, and also which room the device is in. So you have a couple of default or built-in logos, and you can also upload a picture if you fancy. At last, I just want to say a couple of words about the local control. So each Shelly device, Shelly 1 PM included as well, they have an internal web server built into the whole device. So when they get connected to the internet, you can control this device from the website which that small, Shelly provides. And you can do that easily if you just, open your browser and then you just point your browser to the IP address of the device. So http:// and 192.168. something, which is the IP address of the device. Or each of the Shelly device also have a name. So because it's a Shelly 1 PM, as you can see in the URL, it's Shelly 1 PM and then hyphen and an ID, which is going to be unique for that specific device. And you can find that ID in the device information in the app as well. But once you load the app, you can see that it looks and behaves pretty much like the the mobile app as well. So you have access to the output, you can switch it on, you can switch it off. After you switch it on, with a slight delay, like 1 or 2 seconds, you will start with power consumption appearing on the screen. And you also have access to most of the function as well. So you have the settings and the timer and the internet security. So you can do the configuration changes directly on the device using the website which is provided by this device. The only thing you can't see here is the aggregated consumption data, like the weekly, the monthly, and the yearly breakdowns, because these are obviously stored on the server. So that's the only function that you are not getting if you are using the built-in website. That will be my review of the Shelly 1. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see... That would be my review of the Shelly 1. That would be my review of the Shelly 1 PM. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.